I didn't expect to get a call like that. I was kind of done. I was just going to continue doing the TV music. And then when I got the call, I was like, you know what, man, I had all these record deals and it just fell through and nothing ever really happened. I was like, I want to go tour. You know what? I want to go tour. I'm 27 years old at the time. I want to go fucking tour, man.
Yeah.
And that was it. I gave it a shot. And I was like, I'm not trying to replace anybody. I'm not trying to be somebody. I'm just going to do my thing in this band that's established and just bring my energy and bring my thing to the table.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Inner Sleeve Music Podcast, the podcast taking a behind-the-scenes look at all things music. I'm Cassius Morris. Joe Pacheco joining me on the line as per usual. What's up, Joe?
Exciting, man. I'm always excited when we're talking Marty Friedman, right?
That's right. This is a big day, I think, for all the metalheads, and we can barely contain ourselves here on the introduction of this show. This is episode number 110 of the podcast, and we appreciate you guys for checking in. Coming at you with a brand new interview with Saliva on today's podcast. This was a great conversation. We got lots of insight and info on their upcoming brand new album, their tour dates, which are going to come up, which is going to be really cool, and much, much more. So stay tuned for the main feature coming up in just a minute. Guitar legend Marty Friedman has made an iconic comeback with his old group Megadeth for the first time in 23 years. So within my lifetime, Joe, this has never occurred, and this is something that's groundbreaking.
Wow. Now that you said that, I never thought of it, because for me it was like, people are excited. It's Marty. He's playing with his band, which I'm super excited about. But yeah, it's true. I never realized, like, I had time to get to know Marty before Megadeth, during Megadeth, and after Megadeth, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So, I mean, this is definitely cool, not only for the people who were there in the beginning, but also for, you know, the fans such as myself who never really got to experience this era. So this came about sort of by surprise, Joe. I think a day or two before their Budokan show, they had announced that Marty was going to stop by. Of course, Marty living in Japan now, as he's talked about on this show.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it was exciting because, like, we finally found out what happened. We finally found out what happened, right? Not too long ago, where there was a management issue that sort of, they didn't tell him that they wanted a solo replaced, and Dave ended up doing it, re-recorded, I mean, not replaced. And Dave ended up doing it, and nobody told Marty. So Marty hears it at probably the listening party or the launch, or I don't know, like, and then it's like, what the hell happened here? So yeah, I understand. I don't know if I would have quit the band or whatever it may be, but I mean, maybe it was just like the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. That's all he needed. But yeah, I remember we were chatting before recording, and you were saying, I can't wait to talk about this. Can't wait to talk about this. And even when we got on this call, we're like, don't talk about it. Don't talk about it.
Don't say it. Yeah, it's hard to contain my emotion on this, you know, because again, Marty has been someone who I've always looked up to. And also, you know, when you think about the quintessential Megadeth songs, Joe, you know, Tornado of Souls, everything from Countdown, you know, and all the other songs also from Rust in Peace. This has Marty's, you know, work all over it. So it's almost been like he's the elephant in the room when it comes to the Megadeth world in a strange way. And now that seems to have been addressed. Yeah,
I'm just like, at the end of the day, I'm just really happy that, like, everything is buried and, like, let's move on, let's move forward and that kind of stuff. Now, another thing that was interesting is because Kiko Loureiro, which is the current shredder in a guitar player in Megadeth, and I was a big fan of him too in his band in the 90s, which was Angra, a Brazilian band, and like they were doing a lot of prog rock and stuff. So it's like, and now it's so funny to have seen both these guys separately and been fans of both of their playing for years, and then I see them sharing the stage and like basically harmonizing solos, you know, like it's awesome.
I mean, it doesn't really get much better than this. And, you know, I feel like they might have torn this building down, Joe, if they didn't play Tornado of Souls. I mean, it has to be the quintessential Marty solo and one of the greatest solos, I think, arguably of all time.
You know, what's interesting is like, you know, when we had Marty on the podcast, and I'm always looking for keywords to tag. So whenever I would write Marty Friedman, you'd always get Tornado of Souls, Tornado of Souls, Tornado of Souls. So I'm like, wow, man, these people are crazy for this solo. I mean, I mean, Marty, you know, I grew up listening to him and like being afraid of playing Marty solos. Like, I mean, you know, when you're young, you're brash, you're all worried. You're just, I would tackle Steve Vai, I would tackle Satriani, I would tackle Malmsteen, Dream Theater. And then it's like, not Marty, forget it. You know, like why? I'm just too afraid of Marty. He's too unique. Every note is chosen. It's like he chose those notes to be there. They're not just part of the scale or what you sort of a lick that everybody does. It's unique to Marty. So I always got scared when I had to do like, not scared, but like, oh, you know, like I'll do my best, you know, to pull off a Marty solo.
Well, there's always a guy like that in each genre, like a guy like Kendrick Lamar. You know, rappers are terrified to even try to read his stuff, even though it's written for them, because it's just so unique to him, you know?
Yeah, and same thing with vocalists, right? There's certain singers you can do, and there's certain singers like Steven Tyler or Axl Rose that have such a unique voice that like it's so hard to pull off, you know? So yeah, it's going back to Marty. I mean, like I'm really happy to see him playing this stuff again, and like the fans are obviously like jumping out of their seats almost like watching this.
Now, Dave Mustaine commented a little further on the situation that happened with Marty Friedman, saying, quote, "What happened to Marty was definitely not okay. Our management was supposed to tell him, and for whatever reason, they didn't do it. I think it was a terrible thing to do to him." And of course, this is talking about the replacement of the solo on one of their tracks that we were just mentioning earlier. So look, even Mustaine, Joe, he maintains that this wasn't okay. And I think it's one of those situations too, where bands break up, but it's not necessarily like every band breakup is like because the guys hate each other, they can't stand each other. I think things just happen when you're in a band that sometimes maybe you can't avoid. And this seems like it was just an unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, and of all people who should know this, Dave Mustaine having been kicked out of Metallica for, you know, whatever it was, drinking or whatever it may have been.
Combination of things.
Yeah, you know, so I mean, like it took him 20 something years to finally come to that realization maybe, but you know, egos, time, and you know, we don't know the full story. Maybe they've been friends already for a while and it's just like, you know, let's make this happen now that they're headlining their first headline at the Budokan Theater. So I don't know. I'm just, like I said, at the end of the day, I'm just really happy that like it's all coming back together kind of thing. And, you know, we get to see these unique things, you know, that we, you know, as a kid, I never realized, you know, when a band broke up, like even like in 2005, when we saw Roger Waters doing the Live Aid, I think it was with Pink Floyd, you know, and I was like, wow, I just never thought that would happen, you know, but see, they never got back together. And I think now there's even a bit of a rivalry going on between them.
Maybe now more than ever in recent years too.
Yeah, that's it. But like, you know, hopefully everything is good. I don't know. I don't expect like Marty to ever come back kind of thing. I think that ship has sailed thing, but who knows? Maybe guest solos, maybe something like that, you know?
Let us know in the comments what you think about Marty Friedman collabing with Megadeth. Now we're jumping over to our Versus segment on the SoundMojo community tab. Here we asked arena versus club for a concert.
Our audience voted 74% for arena and 26% for club.
I'm actually surprised to see this, Joe, because I figured club shows are more intimate and you get closer to the artist. So maybe that would have got some favor, but I guess not.
Exactly what I would have said and what I did. I voted club. I love club shows. I was lucky enough to see Gilmore in a club-ish, a big, smaller venue. So yeah, nothing to me beats a club. Sound, performance, intimacy. Maybe it's a bit crowded, but
I think when you get to see a really big artist in a small venue, it retains some magic about it that you typically don't see. But that being said, that magic doesn't really exist without the classic arena show. So, I mean, you know, the excitement when everybody's coming into the arena and all of the buzz that you feel in the building, I think that's a big part of it as well. That's very enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that's like the key thing, ingredient, you know, like that's what, I mean, I experienced it at 13 when I went and watched, I think it was Def Leppard, and the crowd just went crazy. And I still to this day remember that feeling, that sensation.
Let us know in the comments if you prefer arena or club shows. Here we ask Coldplay versus Oasis.
Our audience picked 64% Coldplay and 36% Oasis.
This makes sense. You know, I would say Coldplay in terms of longevity has more relevant and recent radio play. They've had consistent hits throughout this past decade, whereas Oasis, I don't think we can say as much is the case.
I agree. I'm a bigger Coldplay fan than I was earlier. Coldplay, maybe I can stretch out and say, which I really liked. But like, I think the key factor is that don't get into any scraps with your brother that's in the same band, and it'll last longer.
Will it ever work to have a sibling group? Because it always seems to sort of dissolve eventually.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some out there that are working famously, as we say, but like in this case, man, these guys are just notorious for just knocking each other out and just all that stuff, you know?
Let us know in the comments who you picked. Now it's time to hop into the main portion of the show with Saliva frontman Bobby Amaru. Now, this was a really cool conversation, Joe. I felt it was awesome to hear the background on their latest single, of course, entitled High on Me, talking about opioid addiction and the different pitfalls with that. How thoughtful they were with the production of the video, having an actual survivor of opioids in the video. There's a lot of cool layers to this interview and ultimately some good info on Saliva in general as well.
Yeah, and I was just glad we got the scoop even on them. Like, he didn't even know that video was being premiered. So,
exactly, right? We gave them a scoop on themselves, so it was perfect.
Yeah. No, it was cool. And like, he was very nice to give us time because like we were just getting into rehearsal, about to rehearse. Like, I think we had like 20 minutes before he had to go rehearse and stuff. So yeah, no, it's good to see that they're excited to get back on and all the, you know, and like, you know, we did speak a lot about Pantera with him, you know, I didn't realize he was such a big fan of Pantera, you know, so that was fun to reminisce a bit about that kind of stuff. But yeah, good conversation.
Definitely cool to hear different perspectives of different groups. So of course we talk about the Pantera tour, their, you know, new collab with Metallica and all that good stuff. So definitely make sure to stay tuned for the brand new Saliva record, which should be coming in a few months. We also got an approximate track list as well for this record. So, you know, Blabbermouth, any of the Saliva fans out there, that's a good scoop for you guys. So hopefully you enjoy this conversation with our man, Bobby, and we'll catch you guys right afterwards.
Are you high on the pills you take, all the crimes of our yesterdays? Are you high?
Cool, Bobby. So what's been going on, man? I know you mentioned you guys have the band rehearsal coming up, of course, prepping for the Spring Mayhem tour, which is going to be kicking off on March 17th. What's been going on you guys' end?
Yeah, we've had a lot of time off, it feels like. We're out here in Vegas doing this #happens convention deal. It's like a radio little deal, which is cool. It's great. Went to like the party last night. They had some bands playing, and then we're playing tonight, and we haven't rehearsed or played in a long time, it feels. So trying to iron out what we're gonna play tonight. So
is that a challenge? Is that something that, like, how long in the making has this process been since you guys have sort of started getting back to it?
Well, the last show we did was in December. I think it's just more of you know, getting your feet wet again and trying to figure out. We're like trying to implement some new songs. Yeah. So it's more for the new songs, I would say. The older ones, we don't really have to rehearse as much because we played them for so long. But yeah, the new ones are the ones we got to work on.
Let me just quick, do you guys still get nervous, or when you have a long hiatus in between, do you still get a bit of excitement? I mean,
I'm always excited to play. I think, you know, all of us love being on stage and performing. That's like that's a fun, you know, it's fun to do that. But you know, a lot of the stuff that goes into that, you know, especially when you're on tour, if you play for an hour and a half or something, you know, you have 22 hours of nothing, of doing nothing, you know, or sleeping and just other stuff. So I would say, I don't know if it's like nervous as much as it is just like anticipating.
I was just taking that same word in my head. What do you do for the next 24 hours? How do you keep yourself busy or interested? Or
if we're doing shows like, you know, say 4 or 5 shows in a row, that's how we like to do them. I know some bands will do like, they can't do more than 2 or 3, and then they need days off. But for me, I mean, I'm okay with doing 5 in a row and then having a day off and then do, so I would say like the best thing I've learned is resting and not talking a whole lot. Just trying to, you know, stay calm and just relax, man. Which is kind of hard to do when you're like in a random city. Yeah. And you're not at home in your own like environment. So it's but that's just part of it.
Do you get to like walk around, see cities, see the stuff?
I mean, I have done stuff like that before, but I typically don't. I don't know what it is about, a lot of cities like to stick to rock clubs in like the worst part of town.
This is true.
It's very true. Trust me. But for us, I don't really do a whole lot of that. It depends where we're at. Like if we go to other countries, then yeah, I like to go and do stuff there, because definitely those are places that you don't go to as often.
Yeah. What do you do? Like record stores, music stores, or like?
Yeah, we do. I will do stuff like that. Record stores for sure. Like, we've played venues where there's a record store like nearby or next door.
Nice.
Always go in there and support, buy a few vinyl and stuff. And that's cool.
Awesome.
One thing I'm wondering about the shows, because you guys get out to a lot of shows. I mean, what's the main difference between a festival environment and you guys' own show? I'm curious, like, does it feel very different in terms of the crowd, since it can be a lot more diversity out there, or does it more or less feel the same?
I think that with a festival, you are playing to a broader audience of people that may not like your band or may be like, oh, I remember them, or, so in a festival setting, it's all about like just going out there and pure adrenaline and just killing it and just bringing it, because you want to win people over, even if they're not a fan of your band or they're waiting on Lamb of God or something. At least like they could go, wow, they were good, or they were better than I thought. And so I love hearing those kind of things, man, from people. A kid will come up to you and he's wearing a Pantera shirt or something, and he's telling you, you guys were great. That's a great feeling for me, to just know that. Again, I'm a huge, and I love Pantera, you know what I mean? I just think bands don't really, come close to what they were and what they had, especially in the metal world. But I would say that's what it is. You're playing to a lot of just different people who love different things. And with a club show, it's like your own crowd and your own, fans that are there for you. Yeah. And I love both. I mean, I think that I've said this before, playing the smaller intimate shows, I think it's humbling, and it makes me feel grateful that when we do the festival shows, it's like that's the reward,
Yeah.
For why we do it. So I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to be one of those bands that just plays festivals and arenas all the time, but we're not. And I'm not gonna, there's no sense in bitching about it. Just do what we do and make the best of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure most people are, you guys are still kicking ass doing awesome shows, and I'm sure 99% of bands would switch with you in a heartbeat. So yeah, it's great to have that. You mentioned Pantera, maybe a little sidebar question here. What are your thoughts on the Pantera reboot that's happening with Metallica this year?
I think it's great that, that package with Metallica and stuff. I think that's really cool that they're doing that, and they're playing headlining all the festivals, and they're going and doing their thing. And I think it was a matter of time before they did. I think some people thought maybe they wouldn't do it. And then I think a lot of people also, it's 50-50. But for me, I think it's, Phil and Rex, and they've, they were there from the start of, well, not the early 80s Pantera, but
that's true.
But meaning like when they, entered the limelight and stuff, and Cowboys from Hell and all that. I think that is, 50% their band as well. I was a fan, and I'd seen Pantera a few times. In fact, my grandfather was really good friends with Phil's dad and Metairie in New Orleans area, Louisiana. So my granddad would always get me and my friends passes to Pantera shows and stuff.
Nice.
So I got to see them in Jacksonville with White Zombie, that was a cool tour. And then I saw them. I saw the Reinventing the Steel tour in Orlando, and got to meet Dime and Benny, and that was cool. But Saliva, we did shows with Hell Yeah, so we'd cross paths with Benny a bunch, and he'd come out and see us anytime we were in Vegas. It was always funny. Like we'd be playing a show in Vegas and it's like, holy shit, there's Vinnie Paul. He's like just there hanging out, you know?
Yeah.
And I always heard that they lived up to the sort of like what people would expect. I've heard there were, you know, the Abbotts were friendly guys, you know, beer in hand and just very welcoming and kind people. That's what I've heard from 99% of folk, if not 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Any story I've ever heard from any musician that's hung out with them, I don't think there's ever been one negative. And from my experience of hanging out with, obviously when I met Dime and Vinny in 2001, I was 17. I was about to graduate high school, you know?
Wow.
But then later on, you know, as I'm in Saliva doing shows with Hell Yeah and Vinny and hanging out with him, he was just always open arms and, you know, he definitely lived, man. Like, where are we going? Where are we headed? All right, let's bounce.
Let's
go to this bar. Let's go here. It's on me, you know? And I think that's says a lot about him and them as people, man. They were just, you know, just as good as it gets, especially in the rock world.
Oh, yeah. I've seen them twice in the 90s and never forget some of the best shows I've ever seen. I still have a Dime pick that I caught and a drumstick.
Yeah.
But and I remember seeing because they came quite often. I think I saw them with Skid Row opening up. So that's early on.
Yeah.
Then I saw them with Typo Negative, I believe. And
right.
I just remember looking while Typo Negative is playing and I see Vinny. You could see him from the stage mixing drinks.
Yeah.
Before they went on, you know, it's awesome.
Yeah.
What a crazy show.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite bands, man. You know, just how they lived it up and they didn't really, no complaints, man. No complaints. You got to give Phil and Rex a lot of credit too, because in those days, I mean, it took four of them, man, to really do what Pantera was doing. And, you know, watch some of those old home videos, man. And Phil was great. And Rex, they were all, you know, hilarious and just in their own right. So,
yeah, I always say they single-handedly, for me, saved metal in the early 90s when grunge kind of killed everybody. And then there was Pantera. And I was like, oh, there's the savior. Right. They're amazing.
Well, they were smart because they actually, it wasn't about how fast can we play, what a lot of metal bands were still doing. It was just groove. Like, how do we be extremely heavy, but we can go play arenas also, you know? And
everything they did, like the kick drum with the click sound, you know, on the kick, that wasn't happening then. And then even Dime, like almost, it's like screw tube amps, I'm going transistor all the way, right? And then he's like, and then like with the guitar solos come in, there's no background guitar, so you got that Van Halen vibe, you know? So it's like, it was different, you know?
Yeah. It will, and I think that's what made their sound special, especially with Vinny and Dime, was, you know, their influences and who they were into, like, you know, Eddie and Alex and that whole thing. They had their own thing, you know, and I think that's part of it. I mean, they were, you know, I think once they actually tapped into what, you know, their style and their sound, it's how they feel about Van Halen, how we feel about Pantera.
100%.
You know, it's like you've never heard a sound like that.
Yeah.
You know, guitar and drums.
Question.
You never heard a sound like, guitar and drums with Eddie and Alex.
It's funny. I just realized the two brother combinations again, both of them.
Yeah. That's
interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely one of those things that comes up. So how about Saliva? You know, I mean, mentioning you joining the group in 2011, what was your sort of awareness of that group before you joined it?
You know, I knew who they were in 2001 and stuff. And I'd gotten a record deal with Elektra at the time. And we flew out, we met with producers and we met with this guy, Bob Marlette, who he had done a bunch of stuff, but he was kind of at the time known for doing the Saliva stuff, the first record. So he did our record. It's funny because he did Shinedown's first record, and then he did Saliva's second record, Back Into Your System, and then my band's record was the third record in that order. And then of course he did several other records after ours, but just the triangle here because, Brad Stewart plays bass with us now, and he was on the first two Shinedown records. And then, just the whole,
keep it in the family.
yeah. So just ironic that's our whole, connection with Bob. And, so, Bob would talk about Saliva a little bit back then, but we was just doing our record and stuff, and it was all fun stuff, he would say. And, fast forward, years later, when Josie decided to quit, I got a text message from a buddy of mine, this guy, Jeff Riles, who was a lighting guy, an LD guy for a bunch of bands. He did back in that day, he had done like Seven Dust and Saliva. And then he ended up doing bands like Godsmack and Limp Bizkit.
Nice.
He's a killer lighting guy, by the way. And he lives in Jacksonville where I live. And he just hit me up and said, "Hey dude, it's very simple. Saliva is looking for a singer. And I sent them some of your stuff." And I was like, "Cool, man." I never even thought anything of it. And then probably 10 minutes later, I got a text from the drummer, Paul, at the time. And he just said, "Hey, this is Paul from Saliva. Would you be interested in working with us?" And that was it.
The rest is history.
They came to Jacksonville, and I think that my name had come up in like different scenarios though, because I think Jeff had sent them my name, but then our front of house guy that we have now still, Phil, he had said that my name had come up because he was doing some of that later stuff too, and he said he had heard about me back then. So I mean, I don't they never auditioned anybody else. I don't know why. I don't know.
That's awesome though.
I didn't ask.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? I mean, why ask?
Right. Well, I think they were just looking for somebody that could come in and that just had an idea of songwriting and producing and stuff too, that could not just be a singer. At that time, I was working on like TV music, and I was like doing cues and stuff for like ESPN and Kardashian shows and things like that. I didn't expect to get a call like that. I was kind of done. I was just going to continue doing the TV music. And then when I got the call, I was like, you know what, man, I had all these record deals and it just fell through and nothing ever really happened. I was like, I want to go tour. You know what? I want to go tour. I'm 27 years old at the time. I want to go fucking tour, man.
Yeah.
And that was it. Gave it a shot. And I was like, I'm not trying to replace anybody. I'm not trying to be somebody. I'm just going to do my thing. And I'm going to put every ounce of energy and, that I've had. And I started thinking about all just the years prior to that, almost like broken dreams, man. And you start thinking about like, were you ever good enough? Were your songs ever good enough? And, obviously this label didn't think so. And you get dropped, and, it's just a tough business, very tough business. So I felt like getting in a band like Saliva, who was established, was like, I can just be me in this band that's established and just bring my energy and bring my thing to the table and see if it works. It might not work. It might be the worst thing ever. It doesn't work all the time. Some bands try it and it doesn't work. And I think that it somehow clicked. And I think a lot of that had to do with me just having that thought of being myself and not trying to be somebody else. Kind of like the Brian Johnson, Bon Scott deal. Obviously, Bon Scott died, unfortunately. Or even like Sammy Hagar, David Lee Roth. I mean, they're polar opposites, man. It's not, I did want to do the songs justice, like just for the fans. And I wasn't trying to come in and, make things completely different. No, I can't do that. Just add my influence.
Yeah, man. Well, 12 years
later. It's been great, man. It's been great.
Awesome.
We love it, man. Well, just to wrap it up, we know you guys are dropping your brand new music video in about 24 hours here. Anything you can tell us for the video for High on Me, or anything you'd like to mention to the fans about this track?
I had no idea that it was coming out in 24 hours.
There you go.
We're breaking news, man.
That's right.
The song is basically about a girl struggling with her own addictions, and it's kind of like, the way I view it is it me or is it the drugs, like, or is it, and I know that there's people, not just, girls and guys, who struggle with this stuff, man. And that's a very personal song for me, because I've had so many friends die from, pill overdoses and stuff, and it sucks. So the girl that's in the video, I wanted her to be in the video, and I called her up. She's a friend of mine I've known since I was like 15 years old. Very just awesome person, but she had some severe struggles in her life. And I was like, I think you would be perfect to play this part, because you've actually been there and you've done this. And, I don't want to insult you, but because she's clean, she's sober. She's been sober like 3 years, man. And it's great. But I was like, you could, like, I feel like I don't want somebody who doesn't know to come in and act. I want somebody who's actually been there.
Yeah. So
she does a killer job, man. And she just like killed it in this video. And the only thing that I can say, I don't want to like, is I'll just say that the band is not in the video. We're not in the video at all. I feel like us not being in the video, it will make that connection more personal with people who do struggle or have struggled, because then they're actually putting themselves in the shoes of the person going through the things they're going through in the video. Yeah. And that's what I wanted it to be about, and not about a band, jumping around with their guitars and stuff. And the fact that the girl playing the role is somebody who, so keep that in mind. She's 3 years clean, man. She went to several rehabs, done. And she's such an awesome person. So I think her story is should give some life to people and hope too, because she's had her battles and she's overcome them, man. So we're all proud of her too.
Well, congrats to her, and we really appreciate you, sharing this message with us and taking the time to put it together. New album on the way eventually here. I don't know if you guys have a track list for this album, like a number of songs, or are you still working on that?
Probably 12 songs. I think there's like 30 done, and we're trying to narrow it down. It's been rough, but it's coming, man. I've got to get it turned in like ASAP. So I'm working on that.
Awesome, man. We're excited. Well, thank you so much for your time, and you guys have a kick-ass rehearsal. We appreciate you.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. Take care.
Peace.
See ya.
Are you high on the pills you take, all the crimes of our yesterdays? Are you high?
Huge shout out to Bobby from Saliva for taking the time to join us on episode 110 of the Inner Sleeve Music Podcast. Really cool scoops all throughout this, Joe. And, narrowing down an album from 30 songs to 12, I was just thinking of that. That can't be an easy job.
That's a task and a half, as I like to say, because I remember growing up and like reading interviews and Guitar World stuff, like with Van Halen, and be like, oh, we wrote 30 songs for the album and we picked the top 10. And I'd be like, what? They wrote 30 songs? Like, how do you choose? They're all like probably so good. How do you choose, like down to 10, and then what happens to those other ones, right? So that's where obviously growing up I realized, okay, that becomes the vaults and all that, the B-sides and all those type of things. But yeah, it's definitely not easy, because especially all the time you put into recording those, making them sound the best so that you can have the best songs, then you gotta sort of chisel. Sometimes it's pretty obvious, like sometimes like a song is a good song but just doesn't fit with the rest
compared to the rest. Yeah I can imagine it's easier in some cases, and I was almost going to say maybe if it's a thematic record, it might be easier, but I'm not sure. Maybe that might be harder.
Yeah, it depends, because like it depends. Like if it's a concept album or something, then maybe it's too specific. But you know what? Like interpretation of things can always work. You can always spin it in a way that it'll work. But Yeah, and then imagine like if you have, I love this song, but this guy's like, no, this one's better than this one, and like that's how you get into those crazy like almost like arguments or fights, and or maybe not. You know, maybe in their case it was damn easy, and like the engineer, the producer, the label. So there's a lot of people that factor in. You know.
Definitely many layers to this, but we're definitely happy Bobby stopped by and gave us some insight. And ultimately, we're really happy with the interview. We're happy that you guys got to hopefully gain some knowledge as independent artists out there. I always say, I hope you guys have your notepads out, because this is really a wealth of information for anybody who's interested in the music business, whether it's, you know, on stage or behind the stage. So we really value you guys coming to check in. And of course, make sure to follow us on social media at SoundMojo. We're on all platforms from Facebook to Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. We're very interactive. We'll respond to you guys' comments. So make sure to come say hello on all of those platforms, and we'll definitely make sure to say hello back. Also subscribe on youtube.com/SoundMojo for exclusive uploads almost every single day of the week. We also have the SoundMojo comms tab for exclusive polls, Q&As, and questions to find out what you guys are listening to and watching. So again, make sure to come interact with that. It's a lot of fun, and maybe you might have one of your comments read on the show. Also, make sure to check us out on all of our audio platforms. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio. Wherever you can find your audio podcast, you can find the Inner Sleeve Music Podcast. And make sure to drop a 5-star rating on that as well. We'd love to hear you guys' feedback and continue bringing you guys great shows in all different formats. Thanks so much for tuning in to episode 110 of the Inner Sleeve Music Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.